Authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo seek urgent international support following emergence of new Ebola cases. Dozens of vehicles set ablaze near Bamako, Mali, as jihadists set a blockade of the city. Communities in Breode River Valley are devastated from catastrophic floods, destroying infrastructure and vineyards. Well, welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. I'm Amarachi Bufani. Welcome to the program. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where health officials say they're intensifying efforts to contain a fast-moving Ebola outbreak as new quarantine zones are established in densely populated areas amid fears of wider spread. Authorities say the outbreak involves the Bundibugyo strain of Ebola, a rare variant for which there is currently no approved vaccine or treatment. With reports of about 136 suspected deaths and more than 540 possible cases. The country's health minister, Samuel Roger Kamba, has warned the decline in international support is weakening response efforts and limiting frontline capacity. Government spokesperson Patrick Katembwe said emergency aid is being deployed even in conflict-affected regions. The World Health Organization has raised concern over the scale and speed of the outbreak, warning that rapid containment will be critical to preventing further transmission across Central Africa. Family and friends of 22-year-old Peter Machanja are mourning after he was shot dead during protests in Kakamega in Kenya during a fuel cost protest recently. A group of rickshaw operators and residents took to the streets today, demanding accountability from authorities and calling for justice. His mother describes a devastating moment she learned of his death, saying the family is struggling to cope and does not know where he will be buried. His brother has called on Interior Minister Katuri Kindiki to ensure accountability. The protests over rising fuel costs follow a wider shutdown by transport operators protesting fuel price hikes, which has disrupted movement across parts of Kenya and triggered clashes between demonstrators and security forces.
To Mr. Murkomen, take action. That police who finished my brother with the last bullet, I want action.
And the charred remains of what used to be the vehicles, including fuel tankers, minibuses, and trucks, are scattered all over the Malian capital, Bamako, as jihadist fighters tighten a blockade amid choking supply routes in the city. The attack has been linked to Al-Qaeda-affiliated Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin. It's been enforcing a fuel blockade on the capital for months. The group has previously targeted fuel convoys and kidnapped drivers in an effort to disrupt supplies. Mali's government, led by Colonel Assimi Goïta, has struggled to contain the escalating insurgency despite military operations and foreign security support. The blockade has worsened fuel shortages, driven up prices, and increased pressure on civilians as major supply routes into Bamako remain under threat. The country of Benin Republic is preparing for a political transition as President Patrice Talon completes his decade in office and prepares to hand over power on May 24th. At his final cabinet meeting, government spokesperson Wilfred Hongbeji defended the administration's record, highlighting major economic gains while also addressing controversy, including the dismissal of 169 staff from the state broadcaster and criticism over detained opposition figures. Mr. Hongbeji acknowledged the timing of the layoffs was deplorable, but defended the government's broader reforms, including strong GDP growth, improved fiscal stability, and rising investor confidence over the past 10 years. Under Talon's tenure, Benin recorded a sharp rise in economic growth, major infrastructure expansion, and social programs such as expanded school feeding schemes and free education for girls, alongside significant industrial development in special economic zones. Communities in South Africa's Breede River Valley are reeling after severe flooding swept through major agricultural regions, destroying infrastructure, damaging vineyards, and disrupting a key export sector worth billions. Owner of the Van Loveren family vineyards, Marily McElhenry, describes extensive losses, including damaged cellars, destroyed stock, and affected worker housing, calling the devastation surreal for farmers across the valley. Farmers in the region say recovery will take months, with large areas of farmland lost and irrigation systems severely damaged. One producer, Neil Retief, said the scale of the destruction could force long-term losses for multiple farms along the river system. The flooding has affected several key agricultural zones, including Worcester, Graball, and the Hex River Valley, after record rainfall overwhelmed river systems and triggered widespread infrastructure collapse. The Western Cape government has declared the situation a provincial disaster as record recovery efforts continue.
So that body mass of water came downstream into the Robertson Valley, and then it came through, devastated quite a few farms, including our cellar, where we had quite significant stock losses, damage to our cellar infrastructure, and then obviously also some of the barrels that got lost. Unfortunately, also some of our farm staffing houses got damaged, but they were moved to a place of safety well ahead of time. The devastation for many, many people in this valley has been surreal. Many people losing their homes, personal belongings. A lot of our working staff here at Van Loveren were also affected by the flood.
It was 3 months. I think the vines behind us about 3 hectares. We calculated about 15,000 trucks of sand by tractor taking it out. So it's manpower, it's excavators. So it's a painful business, and it's not nice seeing your business like this. But we'll have to do it, otherwise you lose it. And then there's about another 15 hectares we walked over yesterday that we won't be able to save, and that's gone. We are lucky, not all our farms are against the Berea River, but there is neighboring farms that most of their farms are close to the river, and they lost a big percentage of their earnings, of their life, of their farm. So there's a lot of farmers next to the river that's going to lose their farms, unluckily. It's billions of rand. I don't think anyone can estimate what's happened, because it's from Rosseville down to Malgas. It's a long river, and it took everything along the way.
Staying in South Africa, the nation's consumers are once again feeling the pressure at the pumps as inflation is set to have accelerated sharply in April. Headline consumer inflation rose to 4% from 3.1% in March, driven largely by a record surge in fuel prices. Statistics South Africa says fuel costs recorded their steepest monthly increase since the current CPI series began in 2008, with petrol and diesel prices climbing sharply. The latest figure marks the highest inflation reading since August last year. Head of macroeconomic fixed income and currency research at Standard Bank South Africa, Elna Moolman, shares her perspective.
In April, consumer inflation increased to 4% on a year-on-year basis from 3.1% on a year-on-year basis in March. This was, of course, largely owing to the spike in fuel prices in April. Core inflation, which excludes energy costs and food prices, increased by a more modest 3.6% on a year-on-year basis, and so it still remains a lot closer to the Reserve Bank's new 3% inflation target than the old 4.5% aim. The Reserve Bank is naturally concerned that the sharp increase that we're seeing in fuel costs will ultimately cause a broadening of inflation pressure, or the so-called second round inflation pressure. It is too soon to assess it in this data set, however, because these pressures take time to develop. We have seen in this data set that transportation costs have increased significantly. This ranges from airfares to taxi fares to long-distance bus fares to e-hailing services. The Reserve Bank may, unfortunately, hike interest rates to ensure that this increase that is underway in inflation will not lead to secondary inflation pressure.
In other developments, South Africa and Botswana have reaffirmed their long-standing ties and commitment to deeper regional cooperation following conclusion of the 6th session of the Bi-National Commission in Gaborone, Botswana. In his closing remarks during the state visit, President Cyril Ramaphosa and Duma Boko highlighted plans to strengthen trade, investment, agriculture and vaccine cooperation between the two countries. The leaders also committed to resolving immigration challenges affecting students and business people.
This binational takes place during challenging times at a global level. The geopolitical architecture of the world continues to change on a daily basis, threatening stability not only for democracy or multilateralism, but also at an economic level. There are strategic opportunities, however, that we should pursue to expand our economic growth on a number of levels, including investment in both countries, including trade, and also including finding new ways in the technologically changing world through innovation and science development.
We must deploy technology in agriculture because agriculture remains central to the livelihoods of our people and their socio-economic well-being. We have, therefore, as these two nations, considerable potential to expand collaboration across the agricultural value chain, including veterinary cooperation, disease prevention and control, agro-processing, agricultural innovation, and improved market access.
Sierra Leone has become the latest African country to receive deportees from the United States as President Donald Trump expands his immigration enforcement campaign. A first group of 9 migrants arrived at Freetown International Airport on Wednesday under a new agreement between Washington and Freetown. According to authorities, the deportees are nationals of Nigeria, Ghana, Guinea, and Senegal. Foreign Minister Timothy Kaba confirmed the arrivals, while health officials said many appeared traumatized after months in detention in the United States. Under the arrangement, Sierra Leone has agreed to receive up to 300 deportees annually from ECOWAS member states, with the U.S. reportedly providing $1.5 million in support for humanitarian and operational costs. We're up for a short break. Still ahead on Network Africa. Nigerian entrepreneurs in the United Arab Emirates feeling the impact of the U.S.-Iran war. We speak to our correspondent about it. Stay with us. Welcome back. Rwanda is strengthening its tea industry with support from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations as the country shifts focus towards premium quality tea production to boost exports and protect smallholder farmers from rising climate and market pressures. Farmers say specialized training and selective handpicking techniques have helped improve both tea quality and household incomes. Formerly a subsistence farmer, one of them now employs workers on her plantation in southern Rwanda and says tea farming has transformed her family's living conditions. Officials at Food and Agriculture Organization and Rwanda's National Agriculture Export Development Board say the country is prioritizing high-value niche markets instead of competing on volume, given Rwanda's mountainous terrain and landlocked geography. The strategy also aims to improve market access, transport links, and regional trade integration, while expanding tea plantations and research to strengthen one of the country's most important agricultural sectors.
It's grown on large scale, but it requires to hand pick it to selectively pick it, make sure that farmers select good leaves, and also going to the factories, making sure that we are processing it well. We have standardized processing method, So all these combinations make sure that we make the tea from Rwanda a good one.
Rwanda is focusing on quality, the standard, and also the access to the pest market. So that is the niche because of the production, because of the topography, because of the number of farmers involved, because of the landlocked situation of the country, because of all these. The focus of the government, which we understand, is to focus on the quality, and that is the best niche for the country.
The parent of today, they are growing it, but normally this is the group which is benefiting, even their sons or their children. So it's a long time gaining, and it's the chain from parents to children up to even grandchildren.
"50 years after establishing diplomatic ties, the Embassy of Vietnam in Abuja says relations between both countries has continued to witness significant growth across trade, education and cultural exchanges. At a press briefing ahead of the anniversary celebration of bilateral relations between Nigeria and Vietnam, the Vietnamese ambassador to Nigeria, Mr. Bui Hong, highlighted major milestones achieved since May 25th, 1976. According to him, Nigeria remains an important supplier of crude oil, gas, and raw cashew nuts to Vietnam, while Vietnam exports textiles, machinery, pharmaceuticals, and telecommunications equipment to Nigeria. He also emphasized growing collaboration in agriculture and food security, with Nigeria seeking to leverage Vietnam's expertise in rice cultivation, food processing, and agricultural value chains. Despite the UAE's resilience against Iranian drone attacks, tourism across the Gulf states, including the UAE, the region's most successful travel hub, remains significantly low. In our next report, our correspondent Mayowa Adigoke speaks with members of the Nigerian business community about the impact of the war on their businesses.
Continued drone attacks linked to the Iran war and a security incident at a nuclear facility in the UAE this week have raised fresh concerns about the wider economic impact of the war on local businesses across the Gulf. For the UAE, where tourism, hospitality and small businesses rely heavily on international visitors, signs of strain are beginning to emerge. And for Nigerian entrepreneurs already grappling with tighter visa restrictions and slowing customer traffic, the uncertainty is becoming increasingly difficult to navigate. Empty chairs and quiet lounges now define parts of Biggie African Restaurant, once a popular gathering spot for residents and tourists alike. Owner Adeyinka Fabi says the downturn has forced painful decisions, including salary cuts and unpaid leave for some workers, just to keep the business running.
I don't know about that, people. For me, all my egg, everything is in this country. So there's nothing God cannot do.
For Mofoluke, who runs a fashion business in Abu Dhabi, selling abroad has become the way to go.
Things have changed, so we just need to move with time, learn with time, and based on knowledge and facts, be able to project what the future is. It's all about restructuring.
According to estimates from the World Travel and Tourism Council, the Middle East tourism sector is losing hundreds of millions of dollars daily in reduced visitor spending as regional tensions continue to affect travel confidence.
Many of you are entrepreneurs and SMEs.
Across the UAE, many Nigerian entrepreneurs say they are now leaning more heavily on community networks, business events, and diaspora platforms, not just for new clients, but for support.
Surprised to see turnout for a Friday afternoon, but it's very important because I've been able to connect with a couple of people, like minds, and exchanging ideas.
Now approaching its third month, the conflict continues with no clear diplomatic breakthrough in sight. And for Nigerian entrepreneurs still operating in the UAE, survival may depend on how long they can withstand the uncertainty. From Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, Maya Wadigoke for Channels Television News.
African countries continue to grapple with mounting debt pressures, rising borrowing costs, and growing uncertainty in the global economy amid ongoing geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. Against this challenging backdrop, entrepreneur and author Dr. Shaka Sisulu says leadership remains a decisive factor at entry level. He argues that this 5-year research shows countries perform better where key stakeholders are able to build consensus and work together across sectors. Our correspondent Innocent Mosa has more.
Political activist, entrepreneur and author Dr. Shaka Sisulu says Africa's long-term economic future will depend not only on policy reforms, but on the quality of leadership shaping business and governance.
A key aspect that came out of the research that I spent the past 5 years doing was that where key social actors from the political era or arena, from the economic arena and civil society arenas, where they work together, develop some sort of consensus, you find that in those instances, countries do a lot better. Leadership is extremely important.
At a time when many African governments are spending more on servicing debt than on development priorities, Dr. Sisulu shares some practical steps that African leaders and institutions can take to ensure debt remains sustainable while still driving growth and investment.
The steps that different countries take has to be dependent on their particular context. Some countries have to prioritize getting a handle on conflict and violence in their society. Other countries have to prioritize a rule of law.
I asked him whether he still has faith in African leadership. Here's what he had to say.
I personally think that, if you have many talented people feeling that they would like to change the narrative of their countries or their continent, then that's a good starting point, because those talented people will begin to deploy their talents in different ways that you and I may not be able to imagine. So I am more hopeful now, having spent time with such individuals, than even when I started the research.
This has been an insightful conversation indeed. Well, Dr. Sisulu says Africa's future will ultimately be determined by the choices its leaders make today as the continent navigates rising debt pressures and an increasingly uncertain global economic landscape. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
We're looking at Cameroon's celebration of its 54th National Day, a large military parade in the capital Yaoundé, and despite security challenges in the country, President Paul Biya presided over the ceremony, which featured marching troops, military vehicles, civilian groups, and international delegations. A contingent from the Chadian Armed Forces also participated as guests of honor. Celebrations were held across Cameroon's 10 regions, including the conflict-affected northwest and southwest, despite reports that separatist fighters had called for lockdowns aimed at disrupting the event. Cameroon's military is currently facing multiple security threats, including separatist unrest in the English-speaking regions and renewed attacks linked to Boko Haram militants in the north. National Day commemorates Cameroon's 1972 referendum when the country voted to replace its federal system with a unitary state. And as we end the program, did you know one of Africa's most powerful waterfalls is so loud it can be heard from miles away? Welcome to the legendary Victoria Falls, located on the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. Locally known as the Smoke That Thunders, the falls send up a massive mist cloud that can be seen from a distance, almost like a natural storm rising from the earth. During peak flow, over 500,000 cubic meters of water crashes over the edge every minute, creating one of the most dramatic natural spectacles on the planet. It's not just a waterfall, it's nature putting a full-scale performance for us to see. And now you know. That's Central Africa. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.